It's time for us to clean another record. We've picked out a beauty for you here. I think that we're going to take a deeper dive today into the Kirmuss system. If you didn't catch our episode last week, there's a link below where we did an unboxing and a review of the Kirmuss Ultrasonic machine and record restoration process. I thought what we'd do today is pick an old record with a lot of old dirt in it and put it through a more traditional cleaning process using some of the other machines that we have at hand. We'll give it a listen, see what we think, and then we'll put it through the Kirmuss restoration process and kind of compare the two. We'll let you know in our final thoughts. But before we get to the cleaning process, I want to share the record that we picked out for you. This is obviously a Beethoven recording. It's from 1955, I believe. It's a really wonderful recording. I like it for several reasons. One, the two pieces on this, one on side A and one on side B, are two of the finest piano concertos that Beethoven recorded. The number 2 is really his first recording. On side 2 is the number 4 piano concerto, which he wrote some 10 years later. So it's fun to see the maturity of the composer over that time period. I really like that kind of stuff. Also, the musicianship here is just first rate. You were talking about the Philadelphia Orchestra with Eugene Ormandy at the helm. That's one of the finest orchestras of the 20th century, I would argue. And the pianist on this one is Rudolf Serkin. He is widely known as one of the finest interpreters of Beethoven's piano music. So really wonderful stuff. In the recording itself, it's an original Columbia 6-eye, mono 6-eye, so we know it's going to sound really good. Let's take a closer look. One thing I'm noticing is the jacket is in kind of rough shape. Well, when you get that old, you're allowed to be splitting along the seams. Some of the plastic covers coming off. This might be one of those records that I put in a protective outer sleeve. We'll see. I can tell it is the original inner sleeve. You can check that out. This side lists some of the artists of the time, which is always fun to see. Look at that. We have a little caricature drawing there. This is why all of us bought stereos as young men, so pretty girls would lean up against us and we could smoke cigarettes while we listened to music. Anyway, that's what they thought in 1955. We've also got a little comparative life of needle styluses. That's kind of fun. Diamond, sapphire, and osmium. I didn't know that stereo needles or mono needles were ever made out of osmium. That's really a metal. It's akin to platinum. Very, very dense. Dangerous as heck if you ever pulverize it. So be careful, fellas. In any case, we have diamond needles today. We will keep this, but replace it with a modern inner sleeve. There you go, the original gray coloring of the mono Columbia 6-eyes. Just what I would expect. Ooh, it's nice and dirty. Absolutely. We'll show you what's in the groove with the electronic microscope before and after. So let's get to it. Let's clean this record. Okay, for our first clean, we're going to utilize the VPI Cyclone machine. I'll be deploying AIVS products. This is the number 15 formula. Like this one, it's a good surfactant and mixes an enzymatic formula with good record cleaning fluid. We'll follow it up with a pure water rinse. We'll use a couple of different brushes for those approaches, both the Prelude and the Osage. And we have separate wands and columns for both of those two steps. Once it's through with the suction machine, we'll put it into the KL Audio for an ultrasonic rinse. We'll bypass the dryer mechanism and take it directly to the Loracraft to bring the water off the disc. That should be a pretty darn clean record. We'll give that a listen, and then we'll come back and give it the full Kirmuss restoration process, and we'll tell you what difference we hear. Let's get to it. Okay, let's get it into the KL audio. Onto the lower craft to pull up the water. Okay, now we'll do side 2 and replace this with a clean mat. Make sure it's nice and fitted properly. There you go. And we'll also get a new fresh piece of string. All right. By all accounts, that is a pretty thorough cleaning. So let's go give it a listen, and then we'll come back up and apply the full Kirmuss restoration process. Well, we just gave the record a listen, and oh boy, what beautiful music that is. But I should note that I also listened to it before any cleaning was done. It was almost unlistenable. It's an old record. What is it? Nearly 70 years old now. But the first cleaning process that we went through, lovely. Did a great job. far fewer pops and ticks, made it for an enjoyable listening experience. But we're going to try the Kirmuss next. We have it set up ready to go. We filled the tank with fresh distilled water, added our 40 milliliters of 70% isopropyl alcohol, took it through 2 degassing processes. We've got our mise en place set up ready to go with a little Lazy Susan and pad. This is the goat hair brush where we will apply the surfactant. We will start the process as the manufacturer suggests and start with the carbon fiber brush. Okay, it's a 5-minute ultrasonic cycle. Okay, the end of our first cycle. I'm going to take it out, give it a little wiggle wiggle, maybe a jiggle jiggle. Surfactant. I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but there is some milky white substance that's come up with the surfactant, so we will of course get it in for a second 5-minute treatment. In between each 5-minute ultrasonic cycle, I like to give the goat hair brush a quick clean with some distilled water in a spray bottle. Just give it a quick spray and wipe it on your microfiber cloth. It's now ready for the next application of surfactant. We will definitely do this at least one more time. I can see by the number of drops of water and their size that this definitely could use one more restoration process. Dab up the spills here. Surfactant on. Far less of that sort of grayish milky white substance. We're getting near the end of the process. Side 2. You only need 3 squirts per side. Okay, that's the end of our third 5-minute ultrasonic cycle. Well, we are certainly very close to done, and frankly, if we weren't doing such a hardcore comparison here, I would call this finished, but just for good measure, let's give it one more cycle. We'll clean the brush. Obviously, there's no perfect way to do a comparison in this manner. I don't know if we'll hear an improvement or not, But even if we do, one could argue, well, if you'd have put it in more cycles in the KL audio, you would have heard a similar improvement. Well, that's a point to be made, but I tell you, the more experience I get with this process, the more I think this is a superior methodology, albeit a time-consuming one. But for a record like this, worth it to me. Our final ultrasonic cycle. Oh yeah, definitely. I can see right off the bat, this is what we look for. As we mentioned in our last video, the review of the Kirmuss, there's a link below by the way, is that the machine can overheat. You can see here the red light has come on and it just went off. There you go. But that red light indicates that the machine is starting to heat up. By no means is it overheating. However, if you're cleaning a lot of records at once, there are some tips and tricks to help keep it from overheating. One thing you can do is about every fifth or sixth record, take the lid off and go through a degassing process. Not only will that ensure that the cavitation bubbles are as small as possible, which is good for the cleaning process, it'll also naturally cool it down. And of course, you could also change the water. Go through 10 or 12 records, swap out the water. It'll be much cooler. That will bring the heat right down. So it is possible to do a lot of records at once without overheating the machine. Good tip to keep in mind there. Okay, back to our Beethoven. What we're going to do now is use this very fine optician's cloth to mop up the last few dots of water. And we'll go ahead and do it on side 2 as well. A very good quality eyeglass cloth, probably used on very high-end optics, I suspect. There we go. Now we're going to go back to the brush, and rather than the carbon fiber side that we used at the beginning, we're going to turn to this side. Bristles in this brush are extremely small, just a few microns across. They'll get deep into the groove and help to polish that groove. Just like that. Love this Lazy Susan approach. Do about a quarter of the record, back and forth. Don't want to press down too hard. All right, now we'll do side 2. Missed a little dot of water there. Okay. Last step in the process is to take your second goat hair brush. I marked it nicely there so we know we like to keep them separate, and apply just a tiniest amount of surfactant. The idea here is we're going to render any remaining static charge on this neutral. It'll help it keep it from attracting dust and particles. There you are. That is it. Now, before we head down to the stereo to give it another listen, I want to make mention that we're going to utilize one of the Kirmuss inner sleeves. By the way, we did a previous video on inner sleeves before we acquired these. Oh yeah, these are definitely nice quality inner sleeves. There you go. Okay, let's take this down and give it a listen. Okay, fellas, here we are. Final thoughts for the record. First thing I want to say is I tried to do this test in the most unbiased way possible. I warmed up the system thoroughly before listening to the record dirty, played a few clean records to make sure that the stylus was well warmed up as well. It was almost unlistenable when it was dirty, and that is not surprising. This is a very old record with a lot of dirt in it. However, after we went through the initial cleaning process, we came back down and gave it another listen. Was it an improvement? It was a vast improvement, of course, but there was still a few pops and ticks throughout both sides of the record. I left everything as it was, didn't touch the volume control, certainly didn't turn off the system. We went back up to the studio and applied the Kirmuss restoration process. What did we hear after that? Two significant changes. One, far fewer pops and clicks. Whatever was in that groove, the Kirmuss process got it out. And secondly, and this is sometimes a little hard to believe, but I swear it sounded a little bit louder, as though the noise floor had lowered just a bit. It's a bit of an audiophile cliche, but it seemed to emanate, the music, particularly the piano itself, seemed to emanate from a darker background, a blacker background than it did prior to the restoration process. Bottom line, it was a more enjoyable experience. This leads us to recommend the Kirmuss for your most valued recordings. It's a lengthy process, but we think it's worth it for those special records. Last thing I'll say, this music, this particular pressing, it's a fantastic record. If you're a Beethoven fan, I highly recommend you check it out. We'll put links in the description below so you can give it a listen before buying, but wonderful, wonderful stuff. All right, we'll see you at the next record. Hit that notification bell. We got part 3 of the Kirmuss restoration review coming up for you next week.